I'm actually going to talk to you guys today about media. How to develop a positive relationship with a very hostile media environment. How to create a messaging calendar so that the media actually, cares about what you have to say and what your campaign is doing. And then we're going to just spitball ideas on how you can get your message out there to the media. We all know that, is there anybody in this room right now who has $1 million for media buys for their campaign right now? Because if you do, there are donation cards in the back of the room. Please feel free to fill a couple of those out. So you're probably going to be focusing more on earned media. So we're going to talk a lot about how to build earned media as well, which plays into your media calendar. Give you a little introduction, or a little bit of information about who I am and why you should even bother listening to me at all. I've been working in professional politics. It's going on my 19th year. I'm not 50, I'm actually 32. So do the math on that. This is all I've done for all my life. It's kind of sad and depressing, but this is it. This is what I do. Before I joined the Libertarian Party about 5 years ago, I was billing out at $125 an hour as a political consultant for campaigns and advocacy groups. So you guys get me for the next 2 hours for free. So you're saving yourself $250, which is, pretty good. You could buy some business cards with that. So if you have any questions at all, do not be afraid to ask them. I love Q&As because I don't know what you need to know. I know everything, so, but I don't know what it is that you're going to run up against, what you've already faced, what you're already dealing with. So you have to let me know by asking those important questions. There is no such thing as a stupid question. There are stupid answers, and I may give you a couple. The one thing I will never ever do is answer a question about policy. I have very strong opinions about policy. I'm the policy guy in my state because I have this weird memory. I can remember statistics and numbers and quotes and things like that. I don't set policy for candidates. I am not going to tell you what you should run on in your race. That is for you to determine. You come to me and say, Evan, this is what I want to run on, this is what I want to do. I will help you craft a message and a strategy around that. So don't ask me a policy question, because if you do, I'll answer somebody else's question and just skip you completely. So don't do that. Any questions so far?
What's your policy?
She's from my home state, so I may be throwing things at her.
Oh boy.
Okay, how many people in here have ever written a press release before? Okay, that's not bad. How many of you got that press release actually hit in the media? Okay, that's pretty good too. How many of you have read a press release from another organization? Okay, great. For those of you who said yes, you have written a press release and got media hits, looking at those press releases, what were some of the key things that set yours apart? The ones that failed, because you've obviously, if you've ever had one that succeeded, you had 150 that failed. So think about, what were those successes? What were the differences between those? Okay, there's actually an answer.
Well, they really like a scheduled event. They'll just automatically print your scheduled event. And I found that if it's just something vague, like call in to schedule time for your appointment, that doesn't get printed at all. They gotta have a hard calendar time, because they have a place to put that. And of course, it has to be as concise and short as you can.
Now, for everybody in here has seen a press release. Seeing it in the media, seeing it actually in the news, how many times was it something that the reporter just copied and pasted it directly? Errors and all. It's like 80% of the time, right? Maybe even 90% of the time. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Reporters are lazy. Absolutely, it's the laziest profession out there that's still considered a profession. They will not do any research. I've had people say to me, oh, we don't have to do anything because the reporters, they'll dig into this. No, they won't. No, not unless they think they're going to get front page and be able to write that story for months. They're not going to dig into anything. I don't know a single State House Bureau reporter who has ever even looked at the contribution lists of a candidate. They will have somebody tell them, hey, there was something funny that happened over here. There was somebody from out of state who donated $250,000 to this campaign, and that person has contracts with each other's businesses and with the state and blah, blah, blah. You should look into that. Then they might actually look into that because now they want to do the gotcha story. But they don't sit down and troll those reports looking for something fun to report on. They will never find anything on their own, ever. Doesn't matter what it is. And sometimes it could actually be, they could be stepping on it and still not know that there's a story right there. Laziest group of people ever. Now, something to remember is that they're the laziest group ever, which means they are not going to read your press release. They're going to read the first line of your press release. And that's it. If you don't grab that reporter within the first line, they will not care. Has to be everything that you're talking about in your press release, in your event, has to be represented in that first line. Libertarian to hand out guns. Okay, I'm gonna read that. And what is it? It's actually something at a gun show. It's you were actually handing out, with some other organization, but you try to find something that's the grabbing headline to get that person to read down to the next 2 paragraphs. Also, because they're lazy, you cannot send a press release that is a novel, that is a book. If it is more than 5 paragraphs, they're not going to deal anything with it because it's too much stuff for them to research and do. Laziest group ever. I want you to burn that into your mind, that reporters are the laziest people ever. They are also the most hateful people ever. If they don't like you, they will make sure that you always look like a clown. Every single time. Doesn't matter if it's print, TV, radio, you tick them off, they will always make you look like a clown. And remember, they have the last word. They get to edit your comments, they get to edit your video, they get to determine how you look. I'm gonna give you an example, and you can go up to him Saturday and ask him about it. I was Rupert Bonham's campaign manager in 2012 in Indiana. Rupert Bonham is an entrepreneur. He runs a nonprofit charity that he's run for 22 years. They take young men out of the criminal justice system and teach them life skills and job skills, trying to get them to be productive members of society. They have a 90% success rate, and they take 0 taxpayer money. Great. I'm leaving out a couple of really big important things about Rupert. He was the fan favorite on Survivor, the CBS reality TV show. He also has a ZZ Top beard and the craziest, wildest, thick black hair you'll ever see. And he only ever wears tie-dye cut-off t-shirts. Now, we did not campaign like that. He wore a suit, the beard was trimmed up to here, from like down to here. He's been a local figure for 10 years in Indianapolis. There's a guy named Jim Shella, and I don't mind saying his name on camera. He's a local reporter, and that's the broadest sense of the definition of a reporter. Announcing Rupert's campaign, Jim Shella contacts me and says, Evan, I'd like to have a 5-minute one-on-one interview with your candidate. And I said, not a chance in hell, Jim. I know you, not gonna happen. He calls Rupert, and Rupert says, yeah, of course, Jim, we've done stuff together for years. Of course, yeah, 5-minute interview. And I went, no, not gonna happen, you're not gonna do it, no. Because I know we actually have a term for it in Indiana. It's called getting Shella'd. Jim Shella will interview you for 15 minutes, and he will ask you the same question over. And I don't mean like he'll ask you, are you going to change your tie today? Where do you live? Are you going to change your tie today? How long have you been married to your wife? Are you going to change your tie today? No, I mean so are you going to change your tie? Have you considered changing your tie? What do you think about people who say you need to change your tie? He asks the same question over and over and over again until he gets the answer that he wants. And the answer that he wants is, Jesus, man, could you ask me something else other than my tie? All he uses is the candidate didn't have a positive response, seems to not understand where his campaign is going. Hopefully during the campaign cycle, he will find his footing. Happens all the time. I'm here to brag, and Greg, also in my state, can vouch for this. I'm the only person that I know of in Indiana that has gone toe-to-toe with Jim Shella and not been Shella. He never, ever, ever invites me back for another interview, ever. If I'm the person that they say to contact, he doesn't want to do a story on it because it won't work. I keep my calm, I continue to answer the question, and the way he will ask it, I will answer it the same way every single time, word for word. And I keep my calm, keep my composure. I don't start sweating, I don't freak out. He hates that. Anyway, so he does the interview with Rupert, and I keep telling him, you're not going to do this, don't do this. And then finally, as a campaign manager, it's early in the season, and I say, you know what? You need to learn a lesson here. Go ahead, Rupert, do the interview. Talks to him for 10 minutes on camera, cuts it down to a 15-second clip of Rupert standing there, sweating profusely, because it was incredibly hot. He's wearing a three-piece suit, which he's never worn in his life. It's a hot summer day in August, and this guy's grilling him about things that he knows absolutely nothing about. 15 seconds of stuttering and stammering. That's what he heard. And he said, I'm not really sure why Rupert's got into this race. I think it might be a publicity stunt, but we're hoping he can eventually figure out how to answer a question. 15 seconds, that's all he heard. Media is hostile, never trust them. Now, what I'm leading into is, how many people have heard the phrase staying on point? Do you actually know what that means, where it comes from? Anybody? No? Okay. Staying on point is, I'm going to use this guy for a minute. I was supposed to have a whiteboard, but I don't, so I can't draw anything. So you guys are going to have to imagine a lot of stuff. We're going to use our thinking caps. Oh, perfect. There's actually bullet points here. Down here on the bottom, you can see these bullet points. They're very short descriptive phrases, typically less than 10 words. How many of you ever heard the phrase, the 10 magical words? Now in politics, no one's heard that before? Okay. We'll say you have. Typically it's about 10 words or less. Can be a little bit longer if that's an important piece, but it's the bullet point. Staying on point, which actually means you literally regurgitate that line over and over and over again. That becomes your line, like a stump speech that you repeat over and over again, but it's a single sentence, it's a single phrase. Staying on point. If you can do that and keep your calm and composure, no journalist, no reporter can screw you. They can't edit you into looking like an idiot. They can't edit what you say. So if you're talking about, let's say, abortion, and remember, no policy stuff here, I'm just giving examples, but let's say you're talking about abortion, and you're taking the stance that murder is murder is murder. And they say to you, and you take this stance over and over and over again, and you keep doing it, they keep badgering you about it, and they say, well, what about in the instance a woman is raped? And you say, well, you know, they've asked you this question twice now, and you stammer with it for a second, and you say, well, you know, I mean, I have to look at my faith, and I believe that God has a plan for every action that happens and wants that life to come into being. You got flustered and said something. You just lost your U.S. Senate race that you were ahead by 12 points. That happened in Indiana. That was Richard Murdoch, who primaried Dick Lugar. And he said that during a debate. So it wasn't really a press situation, but he had actually been asked that question several times. And the answer that he gave before was always great. It was perfect. He does it in this one. He was the last person to answer this question, and he blew it because he was nervous and flustered. Blew it. goes out, his campaign manager, who should no longer be working, let him go to the press galley immediately after the debate and let him stand up there. If I was his campaign manager, I'd be like, yeah, he took some NyQuil a little bit ago, he's had a cold, he's gonna go lay down for a bit, we'll hold a press conference in the morning while I update my resume. But instead, I guess for fun, I think it might have been a drinking game going on back in the back room to see how many times they could actually watch their numbers go down. They let him talk to the press. And he did a fairly decent job of trying to stay on that campaign point. And then he lost it again and started to defend his position that rape was God's plan for that woman. And that was the headline. And every newspaper in Indiana the next morning was, Moordock, rape is God's plan. Yay, you just lost horribly. Horribly. And I mean trounced bad. But so staying on point is so that you don't deviate from that and end up finding yourself in a position where you end up stammering, stumbling, or say something stupid. Where it may sound like it's okay at the time, but a reporter is going to pounce on that one little line where you say, well, it would be great if we had a better educated electorate, and maybe there was a point to having literacy tests for registered voters. You've just lost every minority vote in your district because the topic will be racist. Now, I believe that we should have a better educated electorate, and at some point in time, maybe there possibly was a valid reason for having a literacy test. But you can't say that to a reporter, because they will turn it around every single time. So you stay on point, you stay on your message. Any questions so far? Because you had one earlier, I saw your hand go up. Did you change your mind?
No, well, there was a base question of, are they still relevant with all of the other ways to talk to the voters?
Yes, they are. For however we may bitch and complain and gripe about mainstream media, they are still the #1 sources of news. That is your fast food media. And unfortunately, I'm going to give you 2 breakdowns here. You hear stuff on CNN, Fox, and MSNBC. That's typically where you get your first little tidbit of something. Now, if you're an educated person like everybody in this room, you automatically go to other news sources, more independent sources, and verify that information and figuring out why they're lying and who's paying them to lie about it. We are all fairly educated people, even if it's self-educated. The average reading level of the average American is below a 9th grade reading level. They do not, if they're even watching a news program, that's about as far as that's going to go. So the majority of the country still gets their snippets of news from the mainstream media. That's why CNN's second channel, Headline News, that never gets mentioned in ratings, their morning headline news program with Robin Meade is one of the highest ranked news programs. Why? Because they only focus 10 seconds on each story. And they're fun, and she's happy about it, and she's pretty, and she's got great co-hosts, but it's that fast food mentality of news. So yes, however much they may be disgusting and deplorable and the laziest people on the planet, sadly, they're still relevant. Any other questions so far? Yep.
Well, I get tired when it's obvious that a candidate just has 1 or 2 bullet points and they answer that for everything. I saw a libertarian answer a question about terrorism, that property tax was a worse threat. I thought, oh, brother.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what you mean by bullet point is something that you have thought through and you
No, I mean a bullet point.
practiced it?
I mean a bullet point.
Okay. Well, can you have a lot of them?
No. I typically will only let a campaign have 5. You can have 10 campaign issues, 3 top ones. 1 is your major issue that you're running on. 5 bullet points. Here's why. How many of you have seen Governor Gary Johnson during the presidential debate? Seen him live at an event, okay? How many of you have heard the story I'm still well liked in my state because when I return home to New Mexico, they wave at me with all 5 fingers instead of just one. I have heard that, or the line about someone told me that when I was governor, I vetoed more legislation than all 49 other governors combined. That was an exact quote, what I just said. The reason why I can do that is because I have seen Governor Gary Johnson at least 50 times, and he gives that exact same line. The same as the all 5 fingers instead of one. Why do you do that? Because if I'm talking to your group of people, I have to give that same line. Now, if I come and I talk to your group of people, I have to give the same message because you weren't over in that group of people. But now, okay, come back over here. I'm talking to this group of people instead of just this small group. So they've now heard it twice, which sucks for you guys, sorry about it. But you guys need to hear the entire message. That's why you stay on the bullet point. That's why it's the same line over and over again. That's why major politicians, even on the national level, give the same line over and over again. That's why we use small sentences. Hope for America, hope and change. Yes, we can, you know. We get those those aren't really talking points, but we get those little slogans and those lines going, and you build off of that. The yes, we can has bullet points attached to it. It's how we're going to revitalize this country by building up the millennial generation. That was an Obama line. And it was followed with, yes, we can. You get the people to remember your lines. It's about getting you to remember that small little phrase. Now, if I stand up there and I give you a 30-minute stump speech of heady economic information, you're not going to remember it. Hey, libertarians will, because we're, weird. But let's face it, Donna, you have my vote in Indiana. Donna is running for Congress in the first district. You don't actually have my vote because I live in the 7th, but if I lived up there, you would have my vote.
You vote early and often.
And they do.
Yes.
But so she has my vote. Do I really need to be does she need to be spending all of her time giving me, her academic stump speech? Or is she better off speaking to Greg over here, who is, an independent, moderate Republican, because we're in Indiana, there's no moderate Democrats. She's better off talking to him. And she has to have those short points because Greg has a 9th grade reading level. And right now, I'm sorry, Greg. Right now, you're competing with Dances with the Stars. Or that new show, who's seen the new show, The Wall? Have you seen this one? It's ridiculous. So you have an app on your phone that the camera looks at you, and when you're watching on live TV and the guy gets up there and he's strumming his ukulele and singing that stupid song, if you vote for him, then your face appears on this giant wall of screens. And if he gets a high enough percentage, the wall goes up and he gets a recording contract. Broke a record for reality game shows the other night. The dumbest thing ever, okay? That's because number 1 restaurants in the country are fast food. We know it's horrible for us, absolutely horrible for us. But I eat there, I know it's crap. I've seen what an 8-year-old Big Mac looks like. You know what? I eat Big Macs. Why? Because I'm an idiot. I went to public school, So Greg is in that same boat. He wants you to shut the hell up, okay? He doesn't want you giving him a half-hour lecture. He wants to go watch Dancing with the Stars, okay? He wants to watch some TV show, okay? So you have to make it a quick message that hits them fast, okay? Now, on your website and your campaign literature, sure, put the long stuff there. Because if that issue ends up grabbing Greg, okay? He can go get that information somewhere else. He can get the full information of what you're talking about. And you can make that as long as you want. You want to make it a book? Make it a book. as long as you're not handing it out to people at events. Just put it online, let them get it. But you have to grab people with that headline. When you're reading the newspaper, does anybody actually read a newspaper anymore in here?
A physical one? But I'm old.
Do you know what a newspaper is? Have you ever seen one? Just curious. There were these big things made out of paper and ink. It was pressed onto it, and it had words and.
It's like a blog.
Like a blog, only analog. But so I don't even remember where I was going with the newspaper. Reading a newspaper. Do you skip to the section with all the heady information, or do you read the headline first?
Cartoons.
Of course you would. But do you skip to the meat and potatoes and the heady argument about what the issue is, or do you read the headline first? The headline determines whether or not you're going to continue reading that article. If I read an article that says IPS, that's my local school corporation, to give free lunches to all students, that intrigues me because it's the largest school corporation in Indiana, and I want to know, how are they giving free lunches to every student? How are you picking my pocket for this one? So I'm going to read that, and then I find out it comes from a $32 million federal grant. The only drawback to that grant is we have to agree to a 3-year program, and the last 2 years of the program, we have to fund it ourselves. Yay! I really think they were looking and going, how can we spend $64 million in 2 years? Well, we can't build a building. Oh, I got an idea. Anyway, the next article is, next to it is some sports guy doing something. And I see that, it was Andrew Luck. He's our punter. I think that's the right way. Huh?
Quarterback.
Quarterback for the Colts.
Quarterback C. I don't know. Ask me about the World Cup. I know that stuff. But he's a football player, plays for the Indianapolis Colts. I was actually looking to you for confirmation there. And he was doing something charity related. Obviously, I don't care about that. I mean, yay, charity, but you're also stealing from me to go give that money to charity. Stop it. But so I didn't read that article because I didn't care about the headline. If I care about the headline, I'm going to read it. If I care about the headline that the candidate's giving, I'm going to find out more information. I'm going to ask them questions. I'm going to get involved. That's for most people. Or actually, it's for the core people that are going to get involved with your campaign as well. Those are the people who are going to donate, volunteer, and put a yard sign out for you because they're going to do a little bit more research and discover they really love you as a candidate. But how do you get their vote off of that? Somebody else. You have the other class who, again, are in that 9th grade reading level, who aren't going to go look up that other information. But if you have a line that says, I want to make it easier to start businesses in Indiana so that you can have a better quality job, that sticks with the person. They don't need to go and read my website to find out what regulations I'm going to cut that are the barriers to entry. I said it in a very plain way that everybody can understand, that I'm going to make it easier for new businesses to open so that you'll have a better paying job. That sticks with them, right? They don't have to go look up my roadmap to success, my contract with Indiana. They've got it. And if they hear it over and over and over again, it burns into their mind that he's the candidate that is going to make it easier for new businesses to open so I can get a better paying job. And that's what we mean by staying on point. That was a really long topic. Sorry about that. Any questions?
So one of the problems I had with doing what is it called? Press release, thank you. Was the email addresses that I have weren't up to date. And is there some sort of website or place where I can go locally and find out?
What state do you live in?
Alabama.
Ooh, okay. Have you thought about moving?
Every day.
Is there anybody in here from Mississippi? No, the only thing worse than being from Alabama is being from Mississippi.
Exactly.
If that was the other way around, I'd say in Mississippi. You know? They both suck. Don't tell Daddy Bedwell I said that. First of all, reach out to your state party. Reach out to your state party chair.
Here, we're here.
Oh,
Yeah. We're here.
okay. In all reality, the first thing you're going to want to do, since you don't have these contacts already built up, is you're going to want to buy a media list. In Alabama, I'm willing to bet that that's probably about $175 a year for a digital subscription, which automatically updates that information. So when one reporter leaves, the next report, that information is taken out. Most of them allow you to download it, so you can also put it into your own database so that you can record notes about each of those contacts. You can segment them by, this is a website, this is a blog, and they do actually separate website and blog, which I've never really understood. Radio personality, and then they have the different positions like actual news editor, or just journalist, commentator, State House bureau chief, things like that. Then you record notes. We sent this person the press release, and if you have a good database that automatically captures that was sent to them, then you go in and you take every reporter who published something about your press release and you make a note of it. Was it positive, neutral, or negative? That way you know what kind of relationship you have. And so we're going to move right into that subject now then. So you record these lists, and if you don't have the resources to buy a list, I do really recommend that you do that. I recommend you call one person and say, we really want to make sure we have a strong media presence the next 2 years. It's fundamental. We need to buy a media list. It's $175 a year. I know I can count on you for that, because that's less than what you spend on coffee every 2 months, because Starbucks just went up in price, 20 cents to pay for the scholarships that they're giving away for free. So I recommend getting that list.
Where do you buy the list?
There are several companies out there.
So Google it.
Yeah, that's going to be your best, because the company that I work with does national lists, and they do not segment on a state level unless you're California, New York. So, but you can find them. Easiest way to do it, Google Alabama media list. And you're going to get a couple of companies that pop up. One of the things that you want to look for is that it's a subscription service and that you can download it. There are some media companies where you have a 1-year access to their website, but they don't promise that they're going to make any updates or anything. You get the list as it was the day you buy it. The people who buy it in 2 weeks may get a slightly different list. Make sure it has a subscription service in it. Also, you want to be able to download it. That is key. If you can't download it, how are you going to keep notes? Because keeping notes on that with those contacts in there on a spreadsheet or in a notebook, don't even bother doing it, honestly. But so those are the two things that you want to look for. I think Alabama would be right about that $175 for a statewide list, and it may even include other regions. So you may get some of the surrounding states. I know the Indiana list is $100 more than that. I think it's like $275, but it also includes newspapers in both Ohio and Michigan in that list. It's a tri-state, but they only include newspapers for the tri-state part. So that's about $100 more than that. Okay, so.
Wait,
yes.
Does that just give you here's the editor's email, good luck, or?
They do that. They do reporters. You could end up contacting the food and wine writer,
Okay.
because they have that person listed. And if you're having a food or beverage thing going on, an event, you're dealing with what state are you from?
South Carolina.
South Carolina, okay. If you're dealing with the South Carolina Moonshiners Association, sorry, I just don't know that much about South Carolina. That seems accurate to me. Okay, excellent. Then you would send that to the food and beverage or the entertainment, as well as the news desk, or if they have a political writer, you would send it to them. So I send things to different people based off of, okay, let's think here. I'm doing a hog roast, which I have done. They're awesome just because I like hog roasts. But so in doing that, I actually sent it to an entertainment writer. It was in Central Indiana, and hog roasts are entertainment in Central Indiana because we're all a bunch of country bumpkins. We all grew up on, farms and only eat corn. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So you can be creative when you do it. Now, I have contacts at newspapers that are the editor at large, and I can send that to them because I know them. If you're trying to get your foot in the door with some place, I typically send an email to the highest ranking person that I can get their email for, and then I send it to the news desk. If I'm just shot in the dark, I know nothing about the station or the newspaper, and I'm just trying to get somebody, I'll send them to both of those two people. I don't send it to every reporter, because one of the things is, if I'm the arts writer and you send me a press release about your firearm freedom rally, I'm gonna be kind of pissed and I'm gonna call you spam. And if that reporter lists you as spam, every reporter for that agency gets spam. And here's something else for you. One of the largest companies in the country that owns the most newspapers, radio stations, and TV stations is Gannett. And if you were listed as spam or blacklisted by one Gannett publication, you are for all of them. That's how their networks work.
So you change your email address real quick.
Probably. Well, and it can't be from the same TLD. So it couldn't be from lpsc.org because they block that email. Now, it's not like if you send one press release and the guy's like, man, I fucking hate libertarians, spam, you're screwed. No, you have to keep bugging this guy and bugging other people, and then eventually their system says block them everywhere, okay? So you do want to be judicious about who you are emailing. You don't want to just mass email every reporter they have. But you want to keep those records, because if it is something arts, let's say you get, who's the sci-fi writer that's going to be here? I should know this. I've met him several times. He made the movie Alongside Night with Kevin Sorbo. Thank you. Let's say you're doing a screening for the movie Alongside Night. You could send that to the arts and entertainment writers, because that actually fits into their category. You wouldn't send that to the home and gardening guy, okay? You just wouldn't do that. Now, if you have an article, if you have something that's happening about homeowners associations, that can go to the home and gardening person. They'd actually probably love it to have something like that, because it's something more than if you place your potted plants out at noon and cover them with wet, whatever. I'm a horrible gardener, so everything just dies. And it's not just because I'm never home. I actually go out there every now and then and just pour weed killer on anything that I plant, just to put it out of its misery. But so you find you curtail those lists and you kind of refine it a little bit, so you make sure that you're sending it to the right person. But yes, you can just send it to the head honcho, at least to start. Okay, so I have an AP reporter in my back pocket. I really do. I mean, not like literally in my back pocket, but I have a great relationship with an AP writer who only covers politics. He happens to be based out of Indiana, which made it really easy for us to connect. He is fairly libertarian, which makes it a whole hell of a lot easier. He is very fair to us. If he gets, if he's got a story going and he knows that the Libertarian Party would like to have some sort of input, he calls me up. He says, hey, just giving you a heads up. This is what it is. I'm going to email you 4 questions. Send me back your response, plus anything else you'd like to say about it. And then I write out my quotes and everything, and then he gets his story, and then we get into it. We get into the publication. Does really nice. Sometimes we're even the second paragraph. The best thing you could do, if the story's not actually about you, if it's, they're talking about all 3 candidates, if you can get second paragraph, last paragraph, that's golden. That is the best placement ever to have in an article that's not exactly about you. Second paragraph, last paragraph. The second paragraph is because the vast majority of people don't read past the second paragraph. They read the headline, the subheadline, that paragraph that attaches to it, the second one, and then they're done and they go off to the thing about the quarterback, right? Okay, because that's more interesting. The last paragraph is, for those people who do read the entire thing, your statement is the last thing that they read. That stays in their mind more than anything else. So I love those. I love to get to and last. So if I have some story that's happening, okay? If I know that in 4 days we're going to release some information from the campaign, I know I have a great relationship with this writer. I send him my press release ahead of time, and I put a date on it, and I say in bold letters, press release, Libertarian Party, candidate, blah, 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 blah. Right above that, in even bigger, bolder letters, embargoed. Then I put the date and the time for when he can release it. But this gives him time, let's say it's a 48-hour embargo. This gives him 48 hours to do his research, because I believe this is a big story. I only do this if I think it's a big story, or something really, really interesting, or kind of in-depth. He's got 48 hours to do his own research. So then when I send the press release out 2 days later, and it goes to every other staff reporter in the state that I'm sending this in, he's done with his in-depth story when they're just getting the press release. So he gets to post it first. And the reason why you want to do that is because I have a positive piece from this guy now. If you're a reporter and you see that the AP, who's syndicated throughout the country, has already done the story that I'm just finding out about right now, and they've got a long, in-depth story with quotes and figures and a pie chart, and it's in color, and it's really cool looking, and maybe like a little squirrel graphic in there somewhere. I mean, animals are adorable. But if you have all of that, why the hell would I spend the next day doing research on an article?
Because I'm a lazy reporter, I'm gonna copy and paste.
That's right, I'm gonna copy and paste your press release. I have my press release, and I have a glowing story that has syndication. They're gonna do one or the other. So I can guarantee that the majority of people that come in contact with that story will have a positive aspect on that story. Now, if you're talking about, catching the governor with a prostitute, chances are they're not just gonna go with what the other dude said. They're probably gonna do their research. They're not that lazy. But so, I embargo the story, but I have that contact that one I trust isn't going to leak it, isn't going to publish the story earlier, and is going to be fair to us. Now, how do I know this about him? Because I've been recording all of the articles that he's written about our candidates, our policies, our state party. I've looked at some of his more opinion piece-oriented things on politics in general, and I see that he's somebody that we kind of align with. So I reach out to him and I say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about, whatever. And we actually ended up meeting, sitting down and talking. I don't recommend doing that unless they offer. But we sat down and we met and we talked. And this was actually during a campaign. And I said, look, if you ever need a quote, here's my cell phone number. If you ever need a comment on anything, please call me. Let me know. I'll get you what you need right away. And he did. At like 2 o'clock in the morning one time, he called me up and I answered that phone and he was like, I was just testing you, but since you're awake, did you guys file your campaign finance reforms yesterday? Yes, we did, because you've already sent me something about wanting to know what percentage of ours were from within the state versus everybody else's. But anyway, so building that positive relationship and then rewarding that positive relationship. I'm giving him a story before anybody else. And it's first or none in the print world, in the media world. If they can get their story to publish first, they're the ones that get the raises. They're the ones that get to say, there's a story I'd like to cover. It's in Hawaii. It's going to be about 3 weeks. I need an expense report to do that. It may not pan out as a story, but I think it's a good one. And they're the ones that get, because they're always the ones that come first with a good story. So that's a reward for being not a douche to us. Now, I won't punish him if he says something negative about us, as long as he's fair. So if we have a stupid candidate running on our ticket who makes boneheaded statements, I can't be mad at him for saying their candidate made boneheaded statements. I can't punish him for doing that. Now, if he's just completely unfair about our candidates or our policies or completely dismissive, yeah, okay, I'm going to start reevaluating our relationship. I'm going to find a better reporter to send stuff to. Now, on the national scale, I have about 100, 150 reporters that I actually trust, and that's nationally. And I feel scared about trusting that many, as a matter of fact. Because here's another cardinal rule. Never trust a reporter. Never, ever, 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 ever trust a reporter. Nothing is off the record, ever. I don't care if you guys went to college together and you're just hanging out and having a beer and you're the state chair from Alabama and you start talking about somebody that you know had an affair in another party. Guess what? You're talking to a reporter. A reporter is always a reporter. Kind of like a cop is always a cop. They're never really off duty, even though they probably should be. A reporter is never off duty. And it's even scarier when you see them, oh yeah, that's great. And they pull out a little napkin and start writing little notes down and everything. That's a very scary situation. But you are never off the record. There is no such thing as off the record. What you've seen in movies, that, it's not real. Because what they're going to do is, they're not going to quote you directly, but they're going to go find another source to be able to confirm whatever it is you just said. In some way, shape, or form, it'll always fall back to you. That's if they're being nice. If they're being a dick, they'll just quote you. And now you have a problem. So never trust a reporter. Nothing is ever off the record. The only thing I will ever trust a reporter with is an embargoed press release that I know I'm sending out. I just don't want it to go out early. What's the worst thing that happens if it goes out 2 days early? Nothing. Yes, it screws up my media calendar, but it's not like it kills the campaign. It's not some gossip or some horrible story. My timeline's messed up. I may have had a political advantage for wanting to wait. Maybe I wanted to wait until the other guy's tax returns were going to be filed. Well, crap, now it's 2 days in, I'm not gonna get the story I wanted, okay? But that's the worst that can happen, so that's the most I'll ever trust a reporter, because they're evil, horrible, lazy people. I've never dated a reporter, by the way, so it's not like I'm bitter about it or anything. Any questions?
And now you never will.
No. I've given similar speeches several times. I actually gave one to the Independent Indiana Media Association. They did not like me. They did not invite me back next year. Something about being in a room full of people and saying, you're all lazy and horrible, horrible people that I will never trust. They tend not to like that. Any questions so far? Nothing? Okay. What time is it, by the way?
Almost 5 till 2.
Sweet, okay. I need somebody to let me know when we're like 15 minutes till 3, because I think that's when they're going to tell me to shut up, right? It's 3 o'clock? Anybody know? Okay. You?
Can you talk a little bit about your media calendar?
Yes, that's what I was going to talk about right now. So, because I don't have a whiteboard, imagine a blank wall calendar. And let's just pretend Monday is a first, okay? Or the first is on a Monday. There's some rules of thumb that you always want to use. You want to know your local media market when their heavy news cycle days are. And I can help you with this right off the get-go. It's Friday and Monday. If you have a daily newspaper, it is Friday and Monday.
This is when it's off.
Those are the big media days. Those are when most stories are being done, is Friday and Monday. Here's why. Friday is because they want to get it out before the weekend, because only TV journalists work on Saturday and Sunday. Real newspaper reporters, things like that, typically don't work on the weekends. They do, they talk to people and stuff like that, but they're not in their office, they're not submitting anything. They have no deadlines over the weekend. So only breaking huge, horrific news stories bring them in from their scotch to sit down at their desk and type out drunkenly. So Friday is how many people have heard out the taking out the trash day in movies or TVs or anything? Okay, or throwing out the trash day. Friday's when you dump all your stories. all the big stories, because everything's getting done because nothing will be talked about over the weekend. Why is Monday a big day? Because things do actually happen on Saturday and Sunday, because the majority of the country are off of work. So that's when you have the guy who goes on the rampage at McDonald's because his Big Mac sucked. That could be me one day. That's when everything kind of happens. That's where the gloom happens, the horrible stories, because we're all off work. That's when we kill each other. Why? I don't understand. You'd think it'd be while we were at work, but apparently it's, recreation means death. But so Monday is also the beginning of the news cycle. It's the first day, and that also tends to be another kind of taking out the trash day. Or it's the day where, especially on the national level or big media, I want to ride this story for X amount of days. So I'm going to put it out on Monday because I want to ride it until the weekend. And then when the weekend comes, I want you to watch Dancing with the Stars and everything else and forget about that story. So Monday's a big day. I tend to look at Tuesday and Wednesday to send my press releases. The bigger the publication is, the more inclined I am to go to Tuesday. You're not taking notes, Greg. Does your pen not work? There you go, buddy. Anybody else in here not taking notes? I will walk back there. So yeah, the bigger the paper, the bigger the publication, the closer to Tuesday I want to be. So I build my message calendar around those items, okay? On a heavy campaign cycle, which is typically October and only October, I like to send one press release a week to every market. That is my big issue press release, or bitch slapping my opponents for their positions on things. And I send that out to every reporter. Then I have one other one that kind of goes out to most people, not your entire list, but it's upcoming events. That one I do on Monday.
Do you always just do 7 days out?
Yes, because they won't remember anything other than that.
Sure.
I put it on the calendar, and by the way, we're only talking about media here. We're not talking about our communications to our staff, to our volunteers, or to our email subscribers, okay? When I'm dealing with email subscribers, especially towards the end of the campaign, October, 2 weeks out, 14 days for any events. Because I need them to have at least a few extra days to plan, because what I really want from them is to be there. Because hopefully I'm going to get some reporters to come in. And let me tell you, there is nothing worse than having an event in a room like this where you're holding some policy summit or something, and there are two dudes sitting up front, and both of them work on your campaign. And everybody else is a reporter in the back of the room. And you keep inviting them. No, come up close, come closer. You can stand up here. No, we're good in the back. We can see the whole empty ass room. It's great. So I try to give enough lead time so that I can get volunteers and supporters to attend the events. Hopefully put on t-shirts and...
That was instinct when you told us all to move to the front.
Huh?
It was instinct when you told us all to move to the front.
Yeah. That, and I really hate seeing empty seats up front. It really bothers me, because I like to pick on people, and I can't really pick on people by walking back here. And
I'm taking notes.
you're not taking them, they're good, they're not just doodles. 7 days out, and it's sending to supporter email list, 2 weeks out. That's good, huh? How's the rest of it going? You only have one page? Oh wait, it's not even just me on here. You got the other thing.
But it's important stuff, though.
You owe me $125. Now, I also will do specific emails to individual news outlets or conglomerates. If you're running on a city council or a county council race, you're not going to be sending out as many emails. Let's just be honest, okay? You're not going to have as many policy positions and things like that, unless you're in a market that has like 500,000 or 1 million people within your area, within your district. Then you have, if you're running a congressional race and you have multiple, how many counties? There's like what, 50 counties in the first district?
Well, there's really only 2, but the cities
Is
are
there really?
the biggest cities in the state.
That sucks. Okay. How many are in the 6th? There's what, 15 counties in the 6th district? I know you're not in the 6th district, but is that right? It's like 15?
Close.
It's like 15 counties. It's a shit ton of people. I can't believe the first is really only 2 counties.
It's 2 and then half of another one. But the
Okay.
cities, but it's so spread out, and the cities are huge. We have some of the biggest cities in the state, so.
So we'll say the 6th district with 15 counties. If I have something that's specific to Bartholomew's in the 6th, right? Bartholomew County. It's not my county. I'm the 7th district rep. And I only have one county, Marion County. Yay, makes my job so much easier there. I'm doing something in Bartholomew County. I'm going to have an event there, something like that. I'm only going to hit Bartholomew County's media with it. Okay, and I'm going to try to do it. If I'm wanting to get the press to show up, you have to figure out what's your goal. Is it getting the press to show up, or is it getting people to show up? If this is something where I want the public to come, good luck, then I'm going to send it out the week before. If it's something where I want the media there, that local media, 3 days before, unless it's a weekend. If it's a weekend, it's always on Friday. Yeah.
How does your media approach differ? I'm in Kansas. Huge agriculture, lots of small newspapers, maybe
Yeah.
once a week. 3 major cities, Kansas City, Topeka, Wichita. I mean, we have our media outlets in there. What would your strategy be to reach all of those small counties? Does it differ in your approach as far as how you're contacting them?
No. You really can't treat any publication, any region differently than you would another region. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you maintain the same schedule. Hopefully, if you're campaigning like that and you're in that region, hopefully you're showing equal attention to each county.
Right.
Okay. And if you're not, the last thing you really want to do is send press releases about your previous events that are taking places in other counties, because then you're just going to be like, well, why the hell isn't he coming to our county? What the hell's wrong with us? And then you have to send the press release out that says it's Kansas, you don't have any teeth, and we're just not interested in your podunk little county. You don't want to do that.
Right.
Is that what you meant? Is that what you were asking?
Your approach, I mean, there are 105 counties in Kansas, and we're hopeful to make it to all of them, but we may not. And we're trying to, but the ones that you don't think you're going to be able to, or you don't think you're going to be a big turnout, you don't just ignore them.
No. You still have to send. I mean, you're sending your major weekly address to them, your weekly press release on a big policy issue or bitch slapping somebody,
Right.
because they're going to want that news as well. And actually, smaller regions, smaller districts, smaller towns get completely ignored. No one buys media there. If you're a statewide race or a larger district race, no one pays attention to those places. So you might actually have a better time at this stage in the game sitting down with their editorial board. I'll bet you money they don't have one.
Yeah, it's one person.
Yeah, but offer. Say, I'd be happy to sit down with you to discuss campaign issues. I don't know if you endorse candidates or not through like an editorial board process, but if you do, we'd be happy and very interested in seeking that. But I'd be more than happy to sit down one-on-one with anybody from your publication to answer questions.
And actually, we're starting to see that. We started that 2 weeks ago. If we're going to one location, we look on the map and see what little, as you said, podunk little newspaper,
Yeah.
and we will zigzag all the way just to go in, and they're trying to find something to put on the space because there's nothing
Yeah.
going on in the county.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
But again, like if you're not in the area, if you're in the county next door, you don't really want to be sending them press releases that are tailored for that county. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why is, one, it reminds people that you're not in their county. And two, what's important to Greg's county and what Greg's issues in his county are, it's roads. It's they just passed a new road tax 2 years ago, fuel tax to pay for repairing the roads, but there are potholes the size of VW bugs in every road, major road. Donna's district, the county right next door, it's something else.
Our brand
It's
new
something-
county tax.
It's the money being spent on an armored vehicle.
So you have two separate press releases, one for the big metropolitan areas that you send out like a weekly, and then you have your other one that's more rural that you can send to.
If for the major press releases where I'm doing big press announcements or bitch slapping my opponent, my weekly address does not change depending on the region it's going to. It's the same press release everywhere it goes. What I'm saying is if you're in Donna's County, okay, and you're talking about an issue there, just because Greg's County is right next door and you're not spending any time there, does not mean you want to send that press release to them too. Because if you're dealing with a specific issue for Donna's County, it doesn't matter to this person over here in this county, and quite honestly, that makes you seem out of touch. That's not important to us. We don't have that problem here. God, we wish we had the money to buy an armored car. Why don't you focus on that, you jackass? Where's our county money? So you've actually created a bad situation by doing that. So I tend not to send that to outside counties. Now, if you have a regional thing, like agricultural, or like in Indiana, we have a coal district. And there were a lot of issues recently with the EPA, the president's executive order banning certain amounts of coal production. And then within our own state, we've had state legislators trying to pass legislation against coal, and that's like 25% of the state is coal. I'm going to send that to all of the counties in that coal district. I'm not going to send that statewide, because the last thing I want to do is send a pro-coal thing to Marion County or Northern Indiana, which is like socialist land. So I don't want to, let's pretend up there that we didn't send that press release. Yeah.
So in our state, there's some main newspapers that own about 50 of these little affiliate ones, like the Hilton Head Island Packet or something is owned by the real newspaper as opposed to Courier. Now, if you send it to, do you send it both the parent paper and?
Yes.
Okay.
And here's why. Because the parent company or the head newspaper or outlet may not want to do your article. They may not want to focus anything on it, so they're just going to sit on it. They don't automatically filter it down and send it out and give that authority to the local paper. They squash it.
Sure.
On top of that, a lot of national and big businesses or statewide organizations tend only to send stuff to the parent companies unless it is county specific. So if I'm like Bartholomew County, even though it's only deals with something that happens in Bartholomew County, so they go ahead and they send it to the publication in Bartholomew County. But if it's the coal issue where it's the region, they would only send it to the parent company. All 6 of those counties didn't hear about it. You got no press coverage because the dick who is managing that parent outlet is anti-coal. So he's not going to do it. And that does happen. They have their own agendas, and they will kill things because it goes against their agenda. That happens all the time. So in that situation, I would send to the parent company, then I'd send to the regions, or I'd send to the parent company and the individual county. Michael?
You ever seen any value in press releasing college news outlets, newspapers?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Some of the best coverage you can get on a campaign is from an academic paper.
Yeah.
Coming from the local campus paper. In Indiana, Indiana Daily Student, the Purdue Exponent, I think is the name of it. All the major universities in Indiana, they love getting stuff like that, and here's why. When they put that political story in there, it drives discussion on their website. It drives discussion on their campus. They will go out of their way, if you send them a press release, they will go out of their way to find an opposing view. Because these are the idealistic kids who think that one day they're going to be an actual journalist instead of a copy-paster. So college newspapers, those guys actually do the work. They'll actually dig into a story. They'll seek opposing views. They'll try to find an additional expert in the area. They love it. And it creates that debate and that discussion, and they love that because how do you, in this day and age, as a young person in journalism school, how do you show that you're an exceptional writer? The number one way is my article in our newspaper received the largest number of online comments and views in the 4 years that I was at that school. My articles routinely had the most amounts of link backs and things, because they're actually measuring this stuff now. This is how they measure it, because now we can actually measure human interaction with the story. It's not just a team of professors sitting there and going, you wrote the best story of the year. Congratulations, you get a national award. Now it's kids from across the country came to your article about exposing the dean of students having an affair with somebody and getting tuition kickbacks or something. I don't know. I'm not in college. I don't know what they care about. But that was the most viewed, the most commented story of all the college newspapers. You win $500 and a crappy job. But yeah, definitely focus on college newspapers.
So you want to treat them like you treat a regular media outlet, like
Yes.
sticking to the press release rules and everything?
Yeah, actually, college newspapers, think of them as they are only statewide, that they're not a county or region. Anything that would be statewide issue is there. They typically don't care about local county issues unless it directly relates to the university. So if it's a tax to raise money for a new convention center for the hotel, if it's the county clerk is not recognizing students as residents so they can't vote, if it's things like that, then yes, because it matters to those students. But the vast majority of them, of the stories that would be local for that community, they don't care. You gotta remember, these kids are not invested in that county. When they're done with college, they're probably moving back home to live with their parents for the next 8-9 years. Because copying and pasting is really easy. Just saying. You don't need 4 years to do that. Any other questions so far? Okay. When I'm doing a message calendar, I do my message calendar 3 months out. I try to pick topics. I'm going to take my jacket off because it's a little hot in here. I try to pick topics that are going to be timely relevant. I know when hunting season starts in Indiana. That's a lie. I actually don't, but I know roughly it's like,
Depends on the weather.
fall-ish. Typically about the time I see people wearing camo more and more, I figure hunting season's about to start. If I have a gun rights issue, if I have a property rights issue, I want it to go out when hunting season starts. Right before hunting season starts, not when hunting season starts, because they're hunting in the woods and they don't get the newspaper out there. But so I try to time it right before that happens. And if I'm lucky, I've timed it to hit a couple of days, 3, maybe 4 days before hunting season opens for whatever the most popular hunting thing is. If it's deer, elk, random kids in the neighborhood, whatever's the most popular licensed hunting thing, when that season opens, I try to time it for that. If I'm lucky, something ridiculous happened during the hunting season, where like somebody bagged 2 elk and you're only allowed 2, and then they hit one with their car, and the DNR made them throw one in the dumpster. That's stupid. You should, hit it with the car. Your car's probably screwed because it's an elk. Probably should have said like a little doe or something. But if there's some issue that happens during the hunting season, I can follow it up with, see, we told you that you should be able to go out and, and I can follow that up. So I love that. That's why I always try to go before something happens. If I'm doing an early campaign and I'm talking about economics, I love to do it right before the holiday season reports come out. The shopping season, the consumer index reports on how much was spent on online versus in stores and things like that. If I'm talking about some economic policy, specifically when it comes to retail or sales tax or something like that, I want to position it right before that. So then I can follow it up with information from that report. I can get 2 bites at the apple. So try to go before and then look for a way to go right after. So I look 3 months out for every week. What are my policy positions that I'm going to release today? So let's say school starts the first week of September, and I'm talking about crappy public education, K through 12. How old are you?
13.
Are you in public school? You're homeschooled.
Just got out.
Okay. So you
getting
can.
civics credits.
Okay. Excellent. So when that's about ready to start, I like to talk about homeschooling or something about educational choice. A student's education shouldn't be tied to their zip code.
Now, do you have like a big hand-up whiteboard where this is what our topics are as it comes in?
And Greg, you were at the Rupert's campaign headquarters a few times, weren't you?
Yeah.
I have a whiteboard that is this long and a little taller than that. I get tall people in high heels for that. And I have I draw out a calendar, and I have this for this month coming up. And it's color coded and everything, and I have numbers on it, and I know what regions I'm gonna hit, and then over here I have my bullet points, and then I have my messaging for interviews and things like that tie back into whatever our key issue is for this media cycle. So if let's say I'm doing gun rights, hold on. Hold your ears like this, that's what I call it. Okay. So if I'm doing something on gun rights, I've got that. Next week, on Tuesday, I'm putting out my press release on gun rights. Let's say the Constitution is your carry permit, okay? So I've got that, it's gonna go out 2 weeks on Tuesday. I've got my talking points about that. I'm gonna do 4 to 5 talking points on gun rights. I'm gonna try to put in a statistic that's easy to remember in there. Then I'm gonna do my local media outreach and interviews, and how do I tie in property taxes into gun rights? If somebody asks me about employment, how do I say 6 words about employment and then 10 words about gun rights? How do I go back to one of my 4 talking points? That's the media calendar that's up on my wall. And to get one of those, you go to any Home Depots or Lowe's and find I don't even know what the hell they call it. It's like wallboard or something like that, and it's a dry erase board. And you just go in there and take a dry erase marker. If it doesn't work, walk away quickly. They get mad. Interesting tidbit for you. My calendars, things like that, the stuff that I don't want to have to redraw 12 times or 52 times or 104 times. I do it in black permanent marker, typically Sharpie. Sometimes I get creative and use purple and blue and red Sharpie. I put that in there with the permanent marker, and then I use the dry erase to write around it. Dry erase will remove permanent marker, so if you screw up, scribble over it with the dry erase pen, and then wipe it off. It'll take permanent marker off.
Your grid for your calendar, that kind of stuff.
That's in permanent marker. So you do have to make it big enough that you can write in the box without screwing the box up. But yeah, I do that. So I have a giant whiteboard that I do that on. Do you remember it?
No.
I remember mine. Do you have any examples you can give us of a good policy press release?
No.
Do you have any handouts? Can you email us?
No. I don't believe in giving handouts. That's not the way I meant it, but Has anybody in here ever been to one of my talks before or anything? Okay. Did any of you ever get a handout at any of them? The county development program doesn't count. That was a binder of information, so shut it. And most of those pages were blank, weren't they? That's because I quit writing about 2 pages in. I was like, screw it, they'll just take notes. I'm lazy. And I know this is being recorded. I believe that if I hand you something and you look at it, it will have less of an impact than if you write it down yourself. So I believe in taking notes. That's why I'm mad at Greg right now. He's just writing random words down here. Striped shirt, salmon cakes.
An example of a good policy press release.
From memory, you want me to read you one from my memory?
You said to take notes.
Okay.
You won't hand me a handout.
Off the top, actually, I can tell you this. The vast majority of Governor Johnson's recent press releases since he's been at OAI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, OAI. Yeah. It's
it.
difficult.
Our
Yeah.
organization.
Have been really good. Most of his press releases from there. The campaign, not so much. They were a little long. And when you look at his press releases now from OAI, if they're more than 6 paragraphs long, that's not one of my examples of a good press release. So there you go. How's that? Does that work?
Better.
Okay. I know his recent one on re-engaging in Iraq was actually really good. It actually pushed the bounds of what I think is too long, but it gave enough information, and it had good sound bites in it. People hear what they read. Remember that. When I write a press release and I have people, I give it to my media director or somebody else to proofread because I don't want to look like an ass. And they proofread it and they correct my grammar and my quotes. And I go back and fix it back because I want it to flow. I spend a lot of time saying that quote out loud to see how it sounds. Does this sound like I'm talking? I want you to hear a voice in your head when you read that quote, because you do. Every person does. You may not realize it, but you do. So I will, not horrible grammar, not like I'm from, Alabama or anything, but, I don't sound elitist or snobby. My punctuation isn't perfect. My syntax isn't exactly correct. I may have a dangling participle.
Otherwise, we're leaders.
But so I try to make it sound like what it would be if I was standing up talking to somebody. How would it flow if I was actually talking to you? What was my point about that? What the hell did you ask me?
I asked you.
Oh, for a good example. Okay. Sometimes I just listen to my own voice because it's so magical.
And then people hear what they read.
Right. Yeah.
Which is true. You should always read
Yeah.
everything that you're writing out loud to see how stupid.
Now, your main content should be written in a professional, grammatically correct, Chicago rule Chicago style. Use the Oxford comma. That's in your regular content. And your quotes, you want to make sure you hear a voice. When you're reading your press release, and I swear to God I do this because I'm really weird, if my content doesn't sound like it's coming from an anchor, I try again. If the quote sounds like it's coming from my grandfather, I keep it. I know, that sounds weird. You don't know my grandfather, so you don't know the context of that. He's not a rube by any stretch, but...
How did you phrase that last piece you said? The anchor versus your grandfather?
The content, the main meat and potatoes, when I read that, I want to hear an anchor reading it. Is this what would be said on the nightly news? And then a quote, when I read that, I want to hear my grandfather. I want to hear an average person, an average American, Yes, I just said my grandfather has a 9th grade reading level. But, so that's what I want to hear in those press releases. And when you read Gary Johnson's current press releases, when you read those quotes from Gary Johnson, you hear Gary Johnson. You hear his voice. Honestly, when I read, do you guys know Greg Huey? And no, okay, he worked on his campaign. When I read the rest of the press releases, it's his voice that I read, even though I know he doesn't write them anymore. But that's the voice I hear, and it's actually kind of high-pitched. And anyway, but okay. Any other questions so far? Oh my God, really?
I remember. So you said that we need to have 10 talking points or 10 main points. And so on your big media calendar, do you have like different Post-it notes, different colors, and kind of just push them around? Or no?
Kind of, but they're not Post-it notes. I do color coding with pens. A Post-it note can fall off the board and get swept away by a volunteer who's vacuuming because they don't realize that that's an important Post-it note. Everybody knows, Greg can vouch for this, I'm not a very nice person. I've had awards named after me that didn't use my name. If you touch my whiteboard, if you erase something on my whiteboard, non-aggression pledge does not apply. I will beat the crap out of you. And I had a little intern who discovered that when I watched her, came in to see her Windexing. Because the date on the top of the board was from the prior week. So she was helping, she was erasing everything for me. I think she can walk now. That was 2 years ago, I'm not 100% sure. But so I do color code things based off of topic. What type of press release is it? Is this a policy position? Is this commentary? Is this event driven? And then I color code those. And you color code whatever you want. It's like it's a magical time. You get to pick your own colors. It's so great. Then I have, now one of the things that I do, because this is my personal preference, is that on the days, like on Mondays and things like that, I actually change the way those look so that it stands out. So like if the numbers for the days are typically in black on like a Monday, when I know I have something, it's in red. It just stands out more. Like, hey, you gotta put something in this day. The major talking points, your 10 or 12 issues, what are we focusing on, things like that. You have those on one side, and the color coding system that I use for that is education, taxes, civil rights, liberal, conservative. Those are the ones I use. The ones you're always going to want to use for everybody are going to be taxes, education, conservative, liberal. Then you can fill in maybe social issues isn't necessarily anything that you plan on focusing real heavy on. Maybe there's something else, but education and taxes have to be included. Those are the two main mandatory ones, because everything will revolve around education. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. The majority of respondents over the past 10 years will tell you education is one of their #1 priorities when voting. They're also all liars. It is not their #1 priority. It's absolutely not their #1 priority. This is your kid, right?
Yes, she is.
You love your daughter, right?
I do.
You do.
Somehow.
See? You're about to prove my point.
I love her a lot. I'll love her a lot more when she can be my designated driver. But.
We love our kids, but at the end of the day, we do protect ourselves first. If mommy doesn't have a good job, what does it matter what school my daughter goes to?
It's the airplane rule.
Yeah.
Put your
You own mask on first, and then the small children. So everybody says education is the most important thing to them. It's not. I'm going to give you an example. Indiana, 54% of our state budget funds education. 54% of our state budget goes towards education. Now that's just the money side. If you actually look at the budget and state programs, 70% of the documentation for the state budget is for education. There's more programs and spending than any other program in the state. You ask anybody who's not in politics, you ask a union member, how much money is spent on education in the state of Indiana? They don't know. You say, well, what percentage of the budget? This is, you all should try this. This is an experiment for you. Figure out how much in your state goes to education. What percentage of your state budget? And then ask people, especially Democrats, ask them, what percentage of the state budget goes to education? I guarantee you, you will hear numbers within the range of 5 to 15%. I almost crapped myself once when somebody actually said 30%. It's like, you were so close, but also so far from that number. They think they know and they think they care. And when you tell them, and this is going to be true in every state, it's going to be a ridiculous number. You may be shocked to find out that your state, maybe 60 to 70% of your funding goes to education. When you tell them that and can give them that number, they'll be amazed. Well, why do our schools suck? Because you don't actually care. If you cared, you'd pay more attention to your school board elections. Because they're nonpartisan, they get the lowest voter turnout of any other races. If it was the #1 priority in this country, people would show up and vote for their school boards, but it's not. That's why there's so much money dumped into education, because nobody actually really truly cares. But it sounds good. Who doesn't love the kids? I don't. I hate children. Stay away from them. So you're going to have education in there. The reason is because, I hate to say this, you're all going to throw crap at me for it, but you have to placate the masses. They want to hear how you're going to make education better so that she has a bright, shiny future when she graduates from high school and goes to college and takes on $150,000 in debt because she got a degree in gender studies. I hope that's not, because she'll never move out. She'll never. But you have to placate the masses and you have to give them your education answers. And it tends to spark a lot of other conversations, especially if you're talking about things like school choice, charter school programs, homeschooling, voucher programs, things like that. You're going to be surprised how many people will come and talk to you. You'll actually be surprised how many union members will come and want to talk to you about these things in a positive way. Teachers' unions, I mean. Especially if you talk about things like standardized testing. Yeah. If you talk like, this is not a policy thing I'm recommending you to take, but if you talk about, we should untie our teachers' hands and let them teach to the student and not be tied to a test.
Common Core.
Oh my God. Teachers' unions will stand up and go, yes, and you go, we should do it, and charter schools, they go, fuck you, So, education and taxes. Everybody cares about taxes. Again, so they say. No, they don't. They really don't. Because how many of you in this room actually know how much you paid in taxes last year that aren't small business owners? Okay. See? We're the nerds in the world, and it was like 4 people in this room knew, okay? People don't really care about taxes. They have no idea how much they pay. They don't really want to pay anything, but they're fine just, having the government rob their back pocket. They really, it's not that big of an issue to them until you wake them up to it. Okay.
Get a big refund, they don't seem to.
Right. Hey, if they had to sit down every week and write a check to the government for their withholding taxes, then they'd care.
Yes.
Absolutely. They'd be like, wow, hold on. This is $140 just to my state, and there's a VW bug crashed into the pothole in front of my house. What the hell am I spending this money on? Yeah, but that's a speed bump, and now we get into the homeowner association rules on having speed bumps in front of your home. But so taxes and education have to be included in there. Now, when I said liberal and conservative, I tend to try to find things, especially if I'm in a two-way race, I go for here's my liberal candidate, here's the things they're going to be campaigning on. So I have to know what liberal issues they're going to be campaigning on. What liberal issues can I steal from them? What can I be stronger on than that liberal candidate, than that Democrat candidate?
So if they're not for gay marriage and we are.
Classic example, the Democrat we were running against in Indiana in the gubernatorial election in January came out and said, he was the former Speaker of the House in the late 90s, Indiana House. He was the one who pushed for Indiana DOMA. That was the Indiana ban on same-sex marriage, which just got overturned yesterday in Indiana. And then they put a stay on the judge's ruling today. But I have 15 friends who got married yesterday and today, so I'm really happy. What the hell was I saying? They asked him in January, what do you think about same-sex marriage? And it was a trap because they knew. It was brilliant. I loved it because it was a conservative reporter who was just throwing him under the bus. He said, I have a long and proud history of defending traditional marriage in Indiana and will continue to do so. This is a Democrat. Indiana Democrats supported Rupert, the candidate. The head of the Indiana Stonewall Democrats, and I left that part out, the Stonewall Democrats, it's the gay Democrat group, came up to me and said, Evan, I've known her for years. She said, Evan, I want to get 2 of Rupert's t-shirts. Can you do that and help me out? We'll be under the campaign numbers so that nobody will see my name in the thing. And I was like, yes, it's under $100. Great. John Gregg, the Democrat candidate, goes to meet with the Indiana Stonewall Democrats to get their endorsement. She's the head of the organization. She's sitting there at that table wearing our campaign t-shirt, mean mugging him the entire time. We stole that issue from him because we came out and trashed him for acting like a nut job and discriminating against any Hoosier. And that in our administration, we will not discriminate against a single Hoosier. Then we start talking about equal application of the law, and we get more into a philosophical discussion about, I'm a gay man, I don't support gay marriage. I think gay marriage is wrong. It's because I think all state-sponsored marriage is wrong. The government shouldn't be able to pick and choose winners and losers when it's in business or who we freely associate with. I want my contracts protected by the courts. Other than that, leave me the hell alone. We're in this mess because those licenses exist. The history of those licenses, shut up, Craig. The history of those licenses were specifically designed to keep black people from being able to procreate. It was a racist move, and marriage licenses have done nothing. They've been used over and over and over again in this country to keep minorities from being able to have a happy, joined, protected life. Over and over again. It just so happens that at this point in our histories, it's the gays. Next time, it'll be somebody else. So I want to get rid of the license, and that's the conversation that we have. But first we have to say, we want to treat everybody equally under the law, and if the law is this at this point, we're going to make damn sure that Greg's treated exactly the same as you're treated, okay? So we stole that issue from him. We planned this way ahead of time. This was our conversation in August. What can we steal from the Democrat? I knew he was the House Speaker at the time. I knew he signed that bill. I knew he hadn't changed his position. I actually was hoping that this would stay quiet until June. That's when it was on my calendar, because June's Pride Month, and I wanted to hit him right as Indy Pride was starting. They actually ended up having my candidate up on stage, speaking to the crowd at Indy Pride. That's 80,000 people. Greg wasn't there. Which is probably a good idea for him. So that was in our thing. That was one of our issues that we were going to steal from the Democrat. And we had our responses to his other issues that we knew we can't steal from him, but we can make better. We know what they're going to be, and we can give a better libertarian spin. Then we have our conservative Republican issues. What can we steal from them? What are his top things going to be? Just so happens his top things were like hate the gays and put more people in prison.
What if there's only one party?
You still have to do it, and here's why. Because it's not necessarily the candidate in that situation, it's what is important to Democrats.
There aren't any.
You live in a district where there are no Democrats?
Yes.
I mean, it is Alabama.
I am the residential donut around her tiny minority
Okay.
Democratic city.
Do it anyway.
Alabama.
Do it anyway. I don't care. Do it anyway. Because
there are
here's
4 or 5 minorities who have
the reason why you wouldn't do it anyway and have those, pretend that there were more there and they have concerns. The reason why is because it'll just strengthen your issues for other things. In case it does come up, you have your talking points as well.
So if they don't care about education and taxes, really, what do they really care about?
How they're going to go to work,
Okay.
how they're going to feed the family. That is, by and large, the 2 most important things. You're going to be hearing a lot over the next 2 years of something called a food desert. Has anybody in the room heard that phrase before? A food desert is a community that doesn't have access to a high-quality grocery store or farmer's market. This is going to be the agenda for the next 2 years for the Democrats. And what they're going to be talking about is big retailers being racist and refusing to go into minority neighborhoods because the majority of food deserts are minority urban areas. So it's going to be a huge issue. And here's the thing. If you live in a food oasis, you know you have Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, O'Malley's, the Piggly Wiggly, the Stop and Go. I think I'm making up names, but not. You have every type of resource. You have 2 different farmers markets, 2 different organizations doing it. Then you have your food truck fair, and you have food just coming out your ass, literally. You're throwing food away at the end of the day. But for you, you're gonna go, you're right, when I drove through that neighborhood, there was nowhere that I could stop and buy any or corn. Everything was a McDonald's Big Mac. And you're gonna get sympathy for them and say, this is not right. People should be able to give their family, good, healthy substance. They're also gonna spin it to say, the reason why we spend so much money on the SNAP program is because the people who most need the SNAP program are people who live in food deserts. So that's why it costs more. And they're going to say to Republicans, you're right, we wish people would eat better, and we wish they wouldn't eat sugary sodas and eat the crappy Fruit Loops, I almost said Fruit of the Loom, Fruit Loops cereal. We'd love for that to happen. How are you going to create a food oasis in these urban areas? Do you really care about black people eating better? Or do you just want to bitch about it, them using sugary soda, so you can take their money from them? Because if you really care, you'd make sure that there is a federally subsidized grocery store in their neighborhood.
Oh my God.
This is going to be a huge issue in the next 2 to 4 years. And they're already ramping it up. Every farmer's market that I've been to that receives federal funding has pamphlets and information about food deserts. It's a great campaign because people care about people being able to eat. A little bit. I mean, we care unless it costs us money, and then we don't care.
Or a job.
The other thing, how I'm going to get to work. That is, libertarians, we have great responses to that. It's, what are you going to do to improve the economy of Indiana? Okay? Nothing. I'm not going to do a damn thing. I can't do anything about the economy. Are you kidding me? I'm government. I want to be the governor of this state. Do you really want me dicking around with the economy? Really? What I can do is I can ease the burden for entry for new business. I can make sure that every business in Indiana is treated exactly the same. I can make sure that this business isn't being subsidized and given tax abatements at the expense of this other business. I can encourage that kind of growth. People will want to move here. Thank you, sir. People will want to move to this state if we do that. Businesses will want to come here if they know that they've got a good quality infrastructure and they know they're going to be treated equally. We're not going to increase their taxes. We're not going to run them out of business. We're not going to make them fill out 500 pages of an environmental study for a ditch that we built on their property. That actually happens in Indiana. You have to figure out how your business is going to impact the runoff ditch that they built while you were building your property. Yeah, it's awesome. It's 15 pages long. Yeah. So those are those issues. But you have to frame them with your own policies and be able to get those issues out. But those are the top two. And that's the most I'm ever going to talk about policy.
Yeah, two things, Evan. One, you
Are you
said
gonna argue with me about policy?
Let you know when it's quarter to
Yeah,
3,
you
which it
didn't.
is. And two, one thing you haven't talked about, this year seems to be a banner year for the Libertarians as far as number of votes, things like that. Should we be consider using polling at all to kind of build up momentum? If so, how should we use it?
Okay, that's not really a media question.
Yeah, I know.
But I will answer it. He asked, because it's a banner year for Libertarians, should we use any polling for our candidates? It is actually a media question in this sense. If you have good, positive connections with your local media, you're much more likely to have them include your candidates in their polls. In Indiana, our Senate and gubernatorial candidates get included in all the polls automatically. There are a couple of dicks who don't, but we refute their numbers every time because they also tend to be like, oh, Mike Pence gets, the congressman who's Republican that won, is ahead by 30 points against the Democrat. And we sampled 30 registered Republican likely voters. We try to trash their polls. Here's what I can say about polling from a media standpoint. If you are doing a poll, you have to determine what you're wanting it for. What is its effect? Why are you using that tool? Is it because you want to know where you honestly stand in the election? Do you want to know how your name ID comes across? How your messaging is coming across? Great, but you're going to have to do one every couple of months. That gets a little bit expensive, okay? Those numbers do not get leaked. They stay within your campaign. And the reason why is because if they're crappy numbers, you don't want that to go out. Internals typically stay internal. That's why they're called internal. Also, media tends not to put too much of an emphasis on your internal numbers because one, you have a higher propensity to crane who you're calling, meaning, we're only calling this district, which tends to lean more libertarian. Even though we're calling Democrats, they tend to lean libertarian on these issues. They know that. They know that you're going to push call people. Don't you think President Obama is a douchebag? You can't have a negative in a question that you're asking. So they know that everybody does that in their internals. Don't do that in your internals, by the way. Make them realistic numbers. Eric Cantor did not learn that lesson. We're up by 30 points. I kid you not, that's what they thought. Yeah, and the same person who did the internal polling for Cantor, the same company did Romney's internal polling 2 months before the election. It's funny, he thought they were 30 points up in that election too. Internal polling stay inside. Now, if you're doing really well and you have a legitimate polling going on, I try to find a sympathetic organization. This is where I play the politician. I try to find a sympathetic organization or sympathetic media outlet and encourage them. Hey, we're actually polling at 22% in a three-way race. We've had that come back 6 or 7 times now in our internals. You might want to run a poll because that would make a great headline. Sean Hogue in North Carolina?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Three-way race, what's his polling number? 11% in a three-way race. That's never been done there before. Never. Now, in some states, some people look at that and they go, 11%, we do that all the time. It's actually amazing in North Carolina. North Carolina, the media has jumped all over that, haven't they?
I haven't been following
All
that
right.
closely.
Shut up. The media has been jumped all over it. Look at Lucas Overby running in the Florida 13th for Congress, House of Representatives. He's polling at 32%, 33%. That's huge in a two-way race. The undecideds made up over 25% of that poll.
Wow.
Didn't pick either one of them, and he's polling at 32, 33%. That's damn good. What's even better is it looks like the independent or the undecideds tend to lean more Democrat, and the other opponent is a Republican. So that's amazing numbers. Okay, those are the types of things that you want to make sure somebody somewhere. Hey, these are our internals. You might want to run one too. You can't have ours. You can't run that. But you might want to look at this. There's some fun stuff there. Looks like Amendment 2, the Right to Medical Marijuana Act, is going to pass. This is what our polling data says. You might want to run something on that. They're going to do polling, especially if it's something interesting. Now, if you're talking about a county commissioner race, they're not going to do polling on a county commissioner race. But if you're running for Congress or a state legislature seat, they're going to do polling on that, especially if it looks like a libertarian might kick somebody's ass. They want to show that. Now, it's your job when they do that polling and you get amazing numbers to do what Lucas Overby did and to do what Sean Hill did in North Carolina. And that's tell everyone about it. You put it in your emails, you put it in your newsletters, you put it in your media reports, and every time you talk about something, you talk about the 11% is only going up. We have momentum.
Is Sean's poll an internal of his?
His was.
I thought that was a reputable poll.
The first poll that they did was internal. And I know after that they had two different groups come back with similar numbers. One of them actually came back with, I think, 17%. Yeah. But there were separate organizations. Now, the one that did 11%, here's what's funny about that one. The 11% poll that came back was actually done by an organization that wanted to show that the libertarian shouldn't be in the race because he wouldn't do more than 2%. And he was very open about that. He actually talked about it in their statements. We set out to prove that the libertarian should not be in this race. We thought he would get less than 2%, because that's what they get historically. And he's polling at 11% in our biased one-sided poll. They ran that story because it's interesting. It breaks what they think would normally traditionally happen. I guarantee you, if Sean had been getting 2%, they wouldn't have mentioned him. And if they did, it would have been towards the middle, and they would have said, and the libertarian standard bearer in typical fashion is polling around 2%. Just so they could make you look irrelevant. But holy,
Still free.
thank you. Any other questions? Really? There's 6 minutes left. We're just going to sit here and look at each other then.
What about radio? Where does that fit?
Radio, no, we're not talking about buying radio, buying ads. We did 100 and some odd in-studio radio ads in Indiana over the course of a 2-year campaign. Drive time is the best, obviously, in the morning, in the evening. It can have a serious impact. People do still listen to the radio. They really, honest to God, do. They will not pay attention to your commercial unless they've heard it 15 times, but they will listen to you giving an interview. And it's even better because they're interactive, because people typically get to call into those shows, and so they get to ask questions. Rupert, again in Indiana, was asked a question about the Constitution. And I don't even remember what the question was, and he was on a very liberal talk show. And the radio host, started grilling him on it, and he said, "You're not actually reading that right." And he actually, one of the amendments, I can't remember which one it was, he started reciting the Bill of Rights, word for word, just off the top of his head. And the radio host said, "That's amazing. You just know this from memory?" And he said, "Yeah, every single person who wants to serve this state in office should know this by heart." Phone calls that came in, the letters that we got, emails that came in, so many people heard that. and were just amazed. And this was on a liberal, I mean, the most liberal program in Marion County, and that's saying something. But they were still impressed because this person actually knows what the hell he's talking about and actually believes in what he's saying. It's not just somebody giving us lip service. Now, they disagreed with everything he had to say, but they were impressed with the fact that he was genuine and actually knew it. So radio can be very effective. Now, when it comes to press releases, they typically don't. There's a handful of news services, like your AP Bureau within your state. They read from those news sources because they're specifically tailored for 10-second sound bites for a news station. So still send them because some of your talk show hosts, things like that, may want to do a more in-depth talk about it, but you're less likely to get those on there.